Hello, folks. Glad to be back with you. Uh, I thought I would talk about the sun god's debt to the lady. Okay, but before I get into uh, this episode, I thought I'd give a little introduction into actually what's going on, uh, so that those who have some insight into the scriptures uh, will see exactly what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from. And those who don't have much insight to the scriptures will gain some insight into the scripture before I even get into, let's say, the legend. So uh, we have the solar god who enters uh, the underworld, okay, as an adult, okay, the adult sun god. And he travels through the underworld, but he encounters great difficulty from what is referred to as the beasts, the demons, etc., the apex monster. Okay, but this difficulty has to do with a weakness that we can say a semen for the sun god, and it is this semen that he wants to retain. Okay, uh, for his resurrection. Okay, and so he struggles through, etc., and with the help of the lunar lady, uh, we see that the lunar lady, the moon, has uh, a great role actually in the resurrection of the Christ. Okay, because the Christ, okay, uh, is in the tomb, okay, from which he resurrects at Easter, you see. But we see that Easter falls on different Sundays, you see. And these Sundays, or the day of Easter, the day of the resurrection, is determined by the moon. So we have the resurrection occurring on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the equinox. See? So the moon is very important when it comes to the resurrection. And so we now would turn to the child God, okay? The sun God, but he's a child at this point. He too enters the underworld, and he struggles along too, even though he's not a reproducer. He doesn't reproduce semen because he is impubescent. He's a young child, okay? But he too struggles through the underworld. And when he comes to the resurrection or the spring equinox, he comes forth as the solar hero. That is, he comes forth with semen because he has reached puberty. And he comes forth as a reproducer, a young man, after his struggles through the underworld. So we see now that I think that shed a little light, on what I'm about to say. And so here we'll start with the solar God as an adult here, not a child. And so the solar God at the autumn equinox sinks down into the underworld, you see. And we know that at the autumn equinox, thereafter, the nights become longer than the days. Okay? And this is where the problem comes in with the solar god. Now, there are what we call demons, monsters, the ape, reptile, etc. They're in the underworld waiting for the solar god or anyone to come through. That is, they devour the dead. They devour those who enter the underworld, okay? Because there they lose their light or their semen. So the solar god enters the underworld, and he runs into difficulties. The demons and the monsters, the ape monster attacking, causing great wounds to occur in his body. And he's in great pain. This is the solar god. And now he's becoming weak. He's losing his light. So now he calls upon the gods, his friends, for help. And so the goddess, Circe, for example, who is the goddess of Scorpio. And so now we know that the sign Scorpio, okay, falls in, let's say, in the autumn part of the year. And here in Scorpio, the sun god falls rather weak. His vision is dim, etc. But Circe, this god of Scorpio, or goddess of Scorpio, come to his aid, and she throws hot chains, etc., fighting the ape monster and his spawn, his children, his demon children. And but she fights hard for the solar god. But the solar god is able to move on, but slowly, because he's terribly wounded. But then the solar god reaches Sagittarius, the sign Sagittarius, and there Shu and Tefnut, riding on the back of their lion. Shu shoots the arrows, okay, at the demons, and Apep throws her darts at them in order to give the solar god a chance to get through. But the solar god, he travels on slow. He falls to his knees. His sight becomes weak. He can't see, hence he has lost semen. He has lost his light. The solar light is becoming dim, dim, dim. Hence, the solar god's losing its semen. But then he cries out for help again, and the lunar lady hears his cries. And she decides to come to give him assistance, to aid him through the underworld. And she shines her light upon the solar god, which sort of revives the solar god to some degree, giving him strength. He regains his sight, at least some of it, and he is able to continue on his journey, okay, to the spring equinox. And when he reaches the spring equinox, he crosses over and becomes the solar king, king of the mountain. Okay, but nevertheless, he is in debt. Okay, he is in debt to the lunar god, the lunar lady, because she came and assisted him. Okay, but as time goes on, the lunar lady begins to lose her light, her moonlight, you see. And she enters a period where the moon is waning. And she calls upon the solar god to give her assistance. She's in need. And the solar god, in his name of Hugh, okay, hears her. he hears her request for assistance. And she tells him that she wants him to come to her in the dark of the moon. There are 3 nights when the moon is completely dark. We don't see it in the sky. And so the solar god, Hugh, comes to the lady of the moon in the dark of night. He stays with her for 3 nights. And on the 3rd night, she delivers a child. You see, this child becomes the manifester of the lady of the moon. And she, in her name of Mut, calls him Khonsu, okay, the child lunar god. And so Khonsu comes forth, and he shines his light upon the earth, causing vegetation to grow, the cattle to bring forth, and the human to gain in wisdom. You see? And so this is the story of the lunar lady who helped the sun god, and the sun god repaid the debt by giving the lady of the moon a child who would be her manifester and shine her light. Okay. Thank you very much, and I hope you understood what this little legend was about. It has to do with the human who seems to have trouble, okay, during the fall of the year. Hence, fall. The human falls in the fall of the year, you see. And so I think that's a pretty good example of this mythology of the solar god and the underworld. Thank you very much, and subscribe. I have a lot more to talk about, and I'm sure the future episodes will be interesting, and I hope this one was too. Subscribe, and thank you very much for tuning in.